Welcome to She Counts, the Real Talk podcast for women in accounting. We're your hosts, Nancy McClelland
and Question Telka.
And every episode, we're digging into the real experiences, challenges, and unspoken truths of life in this profession.
Because if you've ever felt like you're the only one, you're not, and you shouldn't have to figure it out alone.
Special thanks to our sponsors, Forwardly, Justine Lackey's The Incubator, and Keeper, for helping us bring these conversations to life, enabling us to share out loud what everyone's thinking, but no one's saying.
Today's episode is called Build the Business You Actually Want, and we have a very special guest with us, our good friend, Justine Lackey.
Justine is a trailblazer in the virtual bookkeeping industry, devoted mother to 3, and mentor and coach in her incubator program for bookkeepers and accountants growing their firms. She loves everything entrepreneurship, ethical leadership, almost all technology, and hosting elaborate dinner parties for her loved ones, which I am gonna get an invite to at some point because I've seen those photos. Justine, thank you so much for agreeing to join us on She Counts. I'm especially excited because I know we have quite a few listeners in my Ask a CPA community and also from your incubator community and a ton of crossover between the two. So I want to give a special welcome to all of you out there in each of these groups. Again, thank you so much for being here with us today.
I am so excited to be here. You know, I love spending time with you. I love talking about all things accounting and entrepreneurship, aka what I call talking shop. So thank you for having me.
We are so excited to have you here. And as you know, because you are one of our avid listeners, we love launching each episode with a story. And Justine, I know you have one to share with us about why this episode topic is so important to you.
So I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I just landed in bookkeeping through the invitation of a roommate to go work for a company. But I also accidentally became a pioneer in the virtual accounting space. And so how that happened, which I think is funny because this is a podcast for women, is I used to go around to all different studios and businesses in New York City. And then I got pregnant and I was in a very famous fashion stylist loft. And my office, my desk was actually up a ladder, like not stairs, a ladder. So here I am.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm 6 months pregnant in slingback heels, climbing a ladder. And I'm like, I have to figure out how to do this differently. And so virtual bookkeeping in the early 90s involved FedEx, zip drives, and messengers. And I would just round trip the documents and the files back and forth. And this is before online banking. So that's how I became a virtual bookkeeper, by precariously avoiding my death in New York City fashion loft. So
Oh my gosh, I love that story so much. And I am so glad that you kept that a secret before so that I could hear it for my first time live on the podcast.
Me too.
I remember the shoes.
I have to know if you'll tell us who is the fashion stylist, because, you know, I love some fashion.
Listen, honey, we're bookkeepers and accountants. We keep secrets like never.
Darn.
Well,
I also the sling back.
Like we don't kiss and tell, but yes, we know her work. Let's say that.
Well, hearing that story definitely makes me understand a comment that you've said a few times before better, which was that you never wanted to build the H&R Block of bookkeeping firms. Just you wanted a curated, high-functioning business. You've used that phrase a lot. So I would love to know, and I know our listeners would as well, what did it take for you to get that clarity? And what do you wish someone had told you when you were starting out?
So, like I said, I was an accidental entrepreneur. So this was just really a job, but a job that I could control. I could control the time, the amount of work, the amount of money I was making. And I didn't go to college. I didn't finish college until 2009, which was well after Good Sense was up and running. And I didn't come from corporate. So I didn't have any of these adopted frameworks that people would know: quarterly goals, annual goals, moving strategically towards those goals. So it took me quite a long time to get that clarity because I had, essentially these deficits in knowledge. But what I did know was I wasn't a corporate girl. I wasn't going to a cubicle
Nor did you
ever.
want to, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was working in some cool places, but it just was, it's not my vibe. And the idea of and I think looking back on it, or being in conversation about reflection, it's corporations are really large, and I'm really community centered. And so I think that really was part of it, was a smaller firm was going to allow me to continue to have these relationships. And that's very true. Like when I sold my firm, one of my clients had hosted my baby shower and had been with me for 22 years.
Oh,
Yeah. So, but I eventually got clarity. It took me a long time, but now that's also why I'm very passionate about it, because it led to a lot of dead ends and wasted time and wasted money.
well, you've talked about that in this period where you were like getting clarity on what you wanted, that you made some mistakes because of a what Question and I have talked about a lot, this like external narrative, this pressure to grow at all costs.
Yeah.
And I know that you've shared that you made a few mistakes along the way there as well.
So yeah, I would love to hear if you want to share what those mistakes are, and then what do you wish someone would have told you that may have helped you avoid them?
Well, I think the first and biggest mistake was not having clarity around what I really wanted. Not so here's the really strong tangible is everybody says I want to be successful, but that's ambiguous,
Mhm.
right? You have to get into the details of it. I want to make $250,000 a year, $500,000 a year. I want to work 20 hours. I want to have a team of 5. I want to have an offshore team. I am against offshoring. You have to have actually the outline of what that looks like. It's not enough to say, well, I just want to be financially stable. Like, I just want financial freedom. Like these are
Right.
catchphrases that don't help. So that was my first and biggest mistake. And then I think that because I had this, there's this external pressure for everything to get bigger, right? The
Mhm.
economy
Yes.
always
So
needs to
true.
the economy always needs to expand, your business
Right.
your
Oh, I'm
business.
so glad you used that example because that is something where I get frustrated. It's like, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we've got it figured out and we should just stick with what's working.
Yeah, and that won't always work forever, right? Because things are constantly changing. But yeah, like I think that we're constantly, chasing the next thing because of this cultural narrative that we're not examining. And so there's this immense pressure to keep growing at all costs. And then what happens is, for me, what happened is I ended up growing so big that my business felt like a runaway bus. And
Mm.
really did. Actually,
Let me
my
off.
my wife once told me she was in labor, and the lady was walking around the room, and she said, "I want to get off. I want to get off."
I
And I
changed
always,
my mind. I changed my
yeah,
mind.
like she could get off the bus. But um uh so my business at that point was so big, and for me, I'm not the sole breadwinner. When I first started Good Sense as a corp, I was a divorcee with 2 young children. I eventually got remarried. I had a third child with my husband, and And while I wasn't the sole breadwinner, I was the primary breadwinner. And so I couldn't just get off the bus, right? And but that was a very stressful period where it really just felt completely out of control.
And I think that's so common for women to feel that way who are running businesses. And it's that we have this, as you were saying, this cultural or societal idea and definition of what success looks like. And then we put pressure on ourselves to follow this ideal of success. Like you said, you grow your revenue to X number of dollars or this many people. And that is not always a fit for everyone.
That's right. We're all different. And I like to say everybody has the right size business. And everybody, that the constitution of what that looks like. But I think really what it is it's much easier for us to say, I want to be successful. I want my business to succeed. It's a lot harder to be brave and courageous and write it out and get into the details of it. When you live in the land of ambiguity, you just float, you don't arrive. You don't, you lack GPS
Direction.
direction. Thank you for filling in the gap there. Yeah. Yeah.
I want you to tell this story about you had told me about it, about how you were in a session with your employees where you had built out an entire like road to 3 million roadmap.
Yeah.
And what your like physiological reaction was to that.
Yeah. So in the last 2 or 3 years that I was running Good Sense, we hired an amazing EOS implementer. Her name is Denise Haney. And we brought EOS into Good Sense. And if you're a company that's 5 or more, I think that's a recommendation. I really recommend running your business on EOS.
And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's entrepreneurial operating system. Google that. There's lots of great info out there on it.
Correct.
I know there was also a session last year on EOS at Bridging the Gap that I thought was really fascinating that Roman Villard was a part of. So lots of great info out there if you want to deep dive on that. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So we were in, there's a whole structure about how you roll it out. And, we were building what they call the vision traction organizer. And there's like, your 1-year goals, your 3-year goals, your 5-year goals. And, we, it's me and my entire team together, plus 2 people joining virtually from Florida. And we built out this roadmap to 3 million. And when I ran my bookkeeping firms, because we were doing a full service AP, AR payroll, we had redundancy built in. So we would have 2 people on each of these accounts. So if somebody was out sick or on vacation, everybody could, like the wheels stayed on the bus. So I figured out, this is my best recollection, but my recollection of this was we were going to need, I think it was something like 7 to 9 teams, but then we were going to need 7 to 9 teams. So that would be 14 to 18 bookkeepers. Then we were going to need client service people to manage those bookkeeping teams. Then we were going to need a true integrator COO. And we landed somewhere around 28 people. And
by the way, I think I just got hives.
Yeah,
by the way,
seriously.
just talking about that.
When you're in conference world and you're like, yeah, whoa, and like, you're like, I'm hot coals, like you get so. That's like how the energy in the room was, and I'm like, paid maternity leave for everybody, retirement funds, like, all of these things being really deep desires. Everybody makes over 6 figures, and we mapped it out. Like we could have done it, and so we all leave. We're all super excited. And then the next morning I woke up and I literally could not move my right shoulder. Like my whole neck. And I was like, I didn't sleep wrong. I got like hit with a cinder block. Like it was so bad. I was this chair and I'm like, rotating. And I called my massage therapist. She actually works at a children's hospital. She said, well, I have 20 minutes. So she came here and she massaged me in this very chair. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. And she was like, what is this weight on your shoulders? Like she could not even massage.
What is this weight on your shoulders?
And I happened to be recounting just like, what's going on with you right now? Like what's happening? And I'm telling her about this EOS meeting. And then she's talking about the weight on her shoulders. And I haven't had a lot of aha moments. I know that's a cultural cliche, but that was an aha moment where I was like, oh my God. I was like, I don't want this. This sounds terrible, and that was a clarity moment for me.
It didn't sound
Wow.
like a bus, it sounds more like a train.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had a great team. I mean, I think we could have done it, but I didn't want to do it. It was not my desire to build a corporation, I guess. At that point, it's not still a small business. It's under whatever 100 employees, but it just was not.
So what did you do? Like, so you have that clarity, you have that moment, and you have like this team that you've been talking to, and you're like, everyone's all hyped up and excited about it. How did you manage that after?
Well, that's ethical leadership in action. That's hard conversations. That's going back to the team and saying, it was really exciting. And I really believe that this can be done. But at the end of the day, this is my life. And I am a dedicated leader and I will always take care of you guys when you're here. But what we have is great. And I don't want to do that. And, I mean, it's terrifying to put your tail between your legs and be like, oh, yeah, we took a wrong turn. We got to turn back. But the other consequence would have been greater, which was I was just talking about this with my community members yesterday in an incubator session about integrity. And we often talk about integrity in relation to other people, but we don't talk about integrity in relation to ourselves.
Mhm.
Ooh.
So when we're out of alignment with integrity, that causes inner conflict and stress. So for me to be, at that point, I had figured that part out. And I knew that if I went down this road and built this company, that was out of integrity with me. And that was going to not end up, not be good for me. And then ultimately, when you're not doing well, you can't lead a team.
That's what I was gonna say, is admitting that you have taken a wrong turn or you feel like this would be taking a wrong turn and admitting that to your team. I think that that builds a lot of respect, and then to your point saying, "If we did this, I don't feel like I could be a good leader, so this is not a
Yes.
place where I wanna take us."
And actually, I'm going to interject that this has worked for me with letting go of clients or transitioning clients to colleagues, because we've gone through the right sizing exercise a couple of times, and Justine has definitely given me a lot of insight there. And letting the client know that you're doing this not only for your own good but for theirs, because you would not be able to serve them in a way that either you or they or your team would be proud of. So that's a way
One
that you can extrapolate that lesson.
Yep.
1000%. But that also has integrity.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had people call me and say, do you use Zero? I made a very strategic decision to only do bookkeeping and only do bookkeeping in QuickBooks Online because I wanted us to be the very best at what we did. And telling people, I'm sorry, we don't use Zero, but I heard you guys are great. Can't you just learn it? No, I'm not your person. Or somebody who worked in wholesale. I hated counting bits and bobs and columns and bullets. I'm not your person. You don't hire me. I'm a terrible fit. But that piece, Nancy, that you're talking about, which is it's really important to me that I do a great job for you. And either I can't do what you're asking of me, I don't have the skill set, I don't have the capacity, the teamwork. But sometimes it also comes down to desire. It is
Mhm.
okay for you to turn away clients that you don't like.
Yes.
Well,
Not
and we
all of them,
often
not all of them. That's not a successful business plan. But, when people are nasty or mean or abusive, I see a lot of people, particularly women, putting up with dysfunctional behavior because they believe they have to.
Yeah, because they believe they have to because we've been taught that, but we also have when you're running a firm, we lose track of the fact that, there we can generally always find some sort of business. We have a scarcity mindset, right? So we're like, "Oh, we have to take every single client on." And it's like, "No, you don't have to take every single client on."
Yeah, when Melissa Miller Ferguson gave her talk to Ask a CPA on the ideal client profile, one of the things that she had, I remember really well on one of those slides was clients who are nice. Like that was one of her that when she wrote up her ideal client profile, she's like, I don't want to work with jerks. Right? Like that, there's nothing that's incongruous between that and, developing the clarity that you're describing, Justine, like won't work with jerks absolutely is one of the things that can be on there. It doesn't just have to be, the niche or the geographic locality or whether or not you work with inventory, etc.
I put a linked up post up at some point in the past year where it was something like pro tip for success, just be nice.
Yeah.
Like when you're nice, when you're genuinely nice, what happens is you build relationships. And
Yes.
I my students and my clients that relationships are assets. We can't line item them on a balance sheet. But when I sold my firm, and I don't even know if we actually mentioned that part, but I did sell my firm in 2023. I had 28 people court me. I'm very proud.
Wow.
That's
Um,
amazing.
it was amazing. But the point is that one of the things that made my firm so valuable was that I had very strong relationships. First with my clients. Remember,
Yes. Yeah.
there wasn't just
Yeah.
one that was over 20 years. I talked about the client that had been with me for 22 years, but I had really strong relationships. I had team loyalty. So being able to show this was a really healthy business, and you get there through relationships. And how do you build relationships? You build relationships by having integrity, by being honest, by saying sorry when you're wrong, and good communication.
Okay, well, I want to spend some time on the good communication part because I know that that is related to the different types of growth that you talk about. You talk about lateral growth and vertical growth. If you wouldn't mind defining those for us, and once you've defined those for us, explain how that's related to communication and what happens to us when we don't think about lateral growth.
So before I talk about lateral growth versus vertical growth, how I view it, I want to say the communication piece is keeping your team in the loop is really important, because you're the captain of the ship. And when you are transparent about what the plan is, they trust you and they know where they're going, what their mission is. So that's the first piece of that. But we talked in the beginning about grow, 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 expand, expand, expand. And that's what we call vertical growth. That is the most common type of growth that we hear people discussing. And we talk about vertical growth in terms of raising your revenue number and client acquisition. Those are really sexy numbers. Like, yeah,
Whenever people on LinkedIn talk about having a successful firm, they always talk about revenue. They almost never, ever, ever talk about profit, net income, margins. Yeah.
exactly. That
I
gets real.
know. Yeah, it's crazy. There's some quote that I always makes me laugh, and it is, um, oh, what is it? It is, I can't remember what it is now. Let me see if I can come back to it. But it's basically in a nutshell explaining that paying attention to your revenue is insanity, but paying attention to profit is sanity. And I gotta see if I can find it now. Now I'm curious.
I haven't heard that, but I like it. Okay, so we talk about vertical growth. Everybody's like, oh yeah, I know those numbers, right?
Yes.
Um, One of the other things that I think leads to vertical growth over a long period is also client retention. So sales and marketing and getting the clients. I had a sales call that was great. Like that's really sexy, right? I got a new client. Client retention is really sexy because that's where your asset building component of your firm actually begins. If you have high client churn, your people trying to acquire you are going to be skittish.
And that's what you mean by asset building, building
Yeah.
something that you, in theory, could sell later on, whether or not you actually do, just working from that mindset of building something that could be sold later on. That's asset building.
That's asset building. And I want to talk about that once I get through the lateral growth part, because I want to talk about how I actually figured out I had a business to sell.
Okay.
So lateral growth is all of it's the foundation component, it's the systems, it's the processes, it's the technology, it is the cogs and the wheels of the business. And that stuff requires patience. And it's very detailed, hard work.
Yes.
So when you are trying to stay in integrity and deliver on those client deliverables, whether it's bookkeeping or a tax return or a cash flow projection, you're trying to service your clients. You're trying to vertically grow in terms of client acquisition and revenue. And then you're trying to laterally grow, shore up your systems, build those processes, nurture your team, coach your team, teach your team, build your team. There are very few people, particularly smaller firms, who can do this all at once. So then you need to make a choice about what you're going to focus on. And I had done it a couple of times, but the first time I did this was right after the runaway wasp moment. I was like, I can't take on any more clients right now. I'm too stressed and, I'm messing up. I'm not doing a good job. So I paused on taking clients. But the other part was after we started to really dive into EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, we intentionally paused so that members of the team, so that we could shore up this lateral piece so that we can continuously wow our clients and have a low stress life. I don't think we are transparent enough about how stressful this industry is.
Oh,
Oh, it's brutal.
it's
You
brutal.
know, it's really, I always say money's like medicine. The stakes are really high. It's not like if you're creating social media assets and a graphic goes sideways, like there's real consequences,
Right.
you know? So I hope that gives you clarity around what the difference is between vertical growth and lateral growth. And it's very hard to do those things simultaneously and still deliver on all your client work.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
tell you that's been a struggle for me since the very beginning. And I did remember that quote, by the way. It is revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. That's what it was.
Ooh, I
Ooh.
like that one.
Yeah, I like that one
Yeah.
too. Yep.
So what happens when we skip that step? I know a lot of women, I mean, question, you and I have both talked a lot, both on the podcast and just via endless text threads.
Yes.
When so for you, you didn't listen to your gut, right? When you were starting your firm, you listened to people
Yeah.
who were not entrepreneurs. And for me, it was that I'm not very good at operations. I'm not very good at workflows. I am a dang good bookkeeper and tax accountant and consultant. I am so
Yeah.
good at those things. But I didn't build I didn't have lateral growth because I was always chasing the bus. Not only had one wheel fallen off the bus and was rolling down the highway ramp, but I was also chasing after it, riding on a skateboard on one foot and a roller skate on the other.
Oh my gosh.
So
During a Chicago snowstorm.
during a Chicago snowstorm, yes,
You're
exactly. So I mean that
I feel like you're
I
describing my life right now.
well for you it was more about not like you knew you needed this.
Yeah, because I have a background in, an operational background. And so for me, I think the hang up that I have often had is I know what I need. The problem is that like I'm so hyper focused on my clients and making sure that their deliverables are what they should be that I have a hard time making time to get all of those processes documented. And so it's like this slow moving, you know, thing. And when I started my firm, I had all of this. I knew that I needed that foundation. I knew it. And I knew it because of my experience, but I also knew it because of my gut. And I listened to other people tell me, just start. You need to just get started. And I said this on another podcast recently. I felt like I had prepared to not have clients. I had not prepared to be drinking from a fire hose with clients. And that's what happened. And so that foundation was not where it should have been.
Yeah. So the first thing I would just say is that I think the danger zone is blame, which leads to guilt, which then leads to inaction. It's a cycle where you end up
Yeah.
spending a lot of time. But I had been around, the accounting world. I knew there was other accountants and bookkeepers struggling with this, which was why I launched the incubator in 2022. It was a year before I sold my business. And I said, well, it might have taken me 15 years, but I have figured it out. And what it comes down to is sales, skills, systems, and service, right? And that's what I teach in the incubator program. What I tell you, can't focus on all of these things at once. And each of these larger categories have subcategories to them. What I tell my students and clients to focus on is the system that is causing you the most stress or the most amount of client dissatisfaction or churn. So a really good example of that is if you have people who are leaving because you're missing your deliverables, you need a system in place to help you manage that. Or if you're having a problem getting documentation, you might need to improve your onboarding system. So there's a lot of different ways that we can address it. It takes time to build this out. You have to focus on where the weakness is first.
I think that's really incredible advice, and I'm very curious, what would you say to a listener who's working inside someone else's firm? So not running their own, how would these concepts apply to them?
I'm like, here's the secret nobody knows is every firm owner wants help. And so this going back to
Oh, you have to restate that. That is so good. That is a secret that nobody talks about. Nobody says that out loud. Say it again.
every firm owner wants help.
Wow.
So when you can come into a conversation and say something with, I don't want to say love because you don't really would use that word in a firm, but saying, I really like working here and I really like the work that I'm doing. But these are the problems they keep recurring. And this is the solution that I'm proposing. And I'd like to help you get there.
Wow.
So,
That would
And
take a lot of courage. I
but it
mean, yes,
also shows a lot of initiative too, right?
that's true.
and you don't have to do the work. You could say, like, of course, it is an incredibly, I want to explain that a little bit further. Yeah. You know what? Hard conversations require an incredible amount of courage. But it is also really weak to stay in a situation that you know is not healthy
Mhm.
or not helpful or not good for you. And if you're working in a dysfunctional firm, but you like your clients and you like the owners, you do actually have some autonomy there. You can actually say, I want to help. I might not be the right person to help, but here are the things that are recurring, and this is how I think we could solve it. We could get a better IT company. We could get a really awesome executive assistant. We could change out of this platform that everybody hates and is fighting with every day.
My best mentor ever from a business perspective taught me such an important lesson. She said, "Come to me with solutions, not problems." And that's
Yeah.
Yep.
exactly what you're describing. Like,
Yes.
I see that this is an issue. You find the courage to speak up. As question said, it shows initiative. But you're also saying, here are some ideas
Yeah.
to help them with their vision. And that is very thinking of all of those situations as every firm owner wants help is actually super. I wish I knew that. I wish I had known that 30 years ago. I really do.
Yeah. So the expression is you want to be solution focused, not problem focused.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yes.
loves the person who
Yeah.
comes in and is like, oh my God, all these things are wrong. And no,
That's
like,
what
no
It's
good.
funny that you said that because Nancy and I were before we were recording, we were having a chat today, and I said, we're so similar in the way that when we have a problem, like we might complain about something, but we're always going on to the solution. And that's a lot of how we formulate the podcast too, is wanting to share, solutions, being solution
Yeah.
oriented.
But the
I will.
venting is important too. I always
It
say that the
is.
venting and the validation need to be there and the solution. So I love that. I love that angle, Justine. And you've said that quite a few times about how rapid growth can actually be a liability. And so I want to get into the conversation because you love almost all things technology. I know that you have a parenthesis there, it's almost all things technology, but you are one of the people I look up to in terms of early adoption of technology. So I want to know, as tech and automation continue to shift what's possible in our field, maybe there's a way that we can stem the liability of this rapid growth and instead define growth in a way that includes the things you were talking about earlier: freedom, balance, fulfillment, not just, the vanity of revenue.
Right. I'm like, oh my God, I could go 8,000. Ping, ping, ping. So
I
this is,
said all of the words that
I
trigger and
know,
activate
I know.
the
And we're
teacher
talking
in
about
you.
technology, and I'm like, yay, but
Me too. Me too.
yeah. Uh, I think what I call, the definition of the modern firm is it combines a high touch experience for your clients. That's what I teach in my programs, is the 5-star customer experience that focuses on the value of those relationships, right? We talked about relationships as assets. And then you leverage the technology to support you in that. For example, a really clear onboarding plan, step by step, with a script broken out in there's a number of platforms we could use at this point, right? Practice management softwares. But when you have a great onboarding experience, do you know what happens? You build immediate trust.
Yes, absolutely.
If you bomb it, you have planted a seed where the person has lacked confidence in you or will lack confidence in you, and it will take you a really long time to get that back.
Yeah.
Here's
I couldn't
something.
agree more. So that's so insightful. It's such a good point. Yeah, I think I think that gets overlooked often, but it seems like it should be fairly obvious, right? But not everybody
No,
pays
no, it is not fairly obvious. Thank you very much. I see you looking at me. That is
I wasn't looking
insightful.
at you.
I was looking at you thinking you were gonna look at me though, because I know that is a challenge for me. It
I
absolutely
didn't know
always
it was
has
a
been.
challenge for you.
Yeah.
So that was definitely that was your lizard brain this time.
I acknowledge that.
Here's one thing I want to say about technology, which which is a very feminine way to look at it, which is I feel that technology platforms are like people, and not all people are your people. So A platform that works for a question is not going to work for me, and it's not going to work for you, Nancy, because the interface alone will work for how your brain operates,
Yep.
and so that is like, we're talking about the right size firm, the permission to change course. We first started running Good Sense on Google Sheets. We had spreadsheets for each client, every single account that needed to be reconciled, all the different steps in a Google Sheet. Practice management rolled out on the scene. We tried one. We built it out over 2 months. I came back to my team at 3 months to do an eval, and they were like, "Oh my God, we hate it." We had invested all of this time and all of this energy and all of this money. I talk about this all the time. MTE, money, time, and energy. You pay for things always, through money, time, or energy. So we bagged it and we went back to Google Docs. So sometimes lo-fi is hi-fi. I know that that doesn't satiate people's desire for the bright, shiny object. But the point of you using technology is to improve the client experience and to improve your efficiency. And if you do both of those using technology, you will increase your profitability.
And increasing that profitability is part of building the asset of your company that you were talking about earlier, because you sold your company for a nice amount of money, right?
Well, for a very poor kid who had no college education, I really enjoy life now.
I don't think you need to qualify it. I mean, eh, building a business is also about building an asset. So, can you walk us through? Obviously, this technology component is a big part of having built a valuable asset. So, talk us through how you came to see your firm this way and what advice you'd give someone who's such as myself, who had previously never thought in terms of valuation or exit strategy. Because I want to hear about this. This is selfish question on my part.
No,
Um,
I'm like, I am eating all this up. So,
but it's not a selfish question because my deepest desire is to help people, and I really believe that when we succeed as individuals, that is better for us as a society. So even though it'll benefit you, I'm happy that you answered this question. Inside of my programming and the coaching work that I do, it's very practical, right? We talked about sales skills, system service, but one of the elements of that is the mindset shift that happens both in leadership and around your own self-worth and value. When you live in a scarcity based poverty mentality, and not everybody does, right? That's just my own experience, my life, my destiny. It is hard for you to see a different reality for yourself. So even though conceptually I knew people sold businesses, people bought businesses, like, about this just from culture. I had been running my company for a while. I don't know the exact timeline. I should have put up beforehand, probably 5 years. Remember, I freelanced before I formed my corp and hired my people, so it was a really long trajectory. But 5 years as the corp, and I was working with a designer at the time, and she had a very different pedigree than I did. She came from a wealthy background. She had a higher education. She lived all over the world working. And I was really it was the runaway bus time. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm so frustrated. I just want to quit. And she was just like, well, you could just sell it. And I was like, so what?
like, what?
She's like, you could sell your business. And I was like, what are you talking about?
You're
She's like, well,
epiphany.
yeah, it literally was, I was blindfolded and somebody snatched the blindfold off. And she's like, well, duh, you have recurring revenue. You have a strong model, your operations are great, you have great clients, and you're really like you're a great business, like you could sell it. And I so then I went and I read this book, oh my god, what is it called? Built to Sell by John Wary Lau. And I started doing some research. This like all happened. That book I read in a day because it's a really easy read. But then I went and I looked, and at that time, firms were selling for about one time their annual revenue. And I realized that the firm was actually worth more than the house we were living in at the time, which, to be fair, was a 960 square foot cottage. So
But still,
very logical, super tiny. But
the
it
point
really was.
remains.
The point remains was like I couldn't even see what was possible for myself.
Yes.
I couldn't even see what was possible for
Hey, I
myself.
have to tie that back to what we to one of our podcast episodes, which is she believed in me before I did, and the value of having those strong female relationships and mentors in your life. You had a woman who was able to see something that you didn't see and just like snatch that blindfold right off your face, which is amazing.
Totally. And then that's when I got serious. Then I was like, okay, wait a second. There isn't exit here. I don't have to just quit. And in fact, one of the things that I really believe strongly in is financial stewardship. And so, in fact, at that moment, I knew that it would be wrong for me to just walk away and quit, because then I would be leaving so much money on the table, and not just as a personal financial steward for myself, but for my children. That was not going
Yeah.
to be.
You had built a legacy, but you could not see that it was a legacy
That's
until
correct.
that was pointed out to you. So is that how you developed the Modern Firm Challenge, which we've been talking so much, we've like barely even touched
Yeah.
scratched the surface of this upcoming challenge that you have, which Question and I are both really excited
Really excited.
about taking. It's a free challenge, so I'm making sure that all of our listeners know this is something that everybody can do at no charge. Tell us about it.
So the Modern Firm Challenge is born from my personal mission statement. So we talk about corporate mission statements, but I have a personal mission statement
Mm.
that I live my life by, which is I help the world by helping people. So I'm not going to be Mother Teresa or just huge figures. What I do, my work is individually based. If I help you today, Question, or a listener today, I'm living out my personal mission.
Mm.
And
I
because
love that. I love that. I feel the same. I can relate. I think that's amazing.
it's my personal North Star. So, because I know so many women are stressed out, underpaid, can't figure it out, desire community, co-mentorship, right? You can be mentored by your peers, as you guys
Yes.
out. So I developed the Modern Firm Challenge. It's 5 days. We walk through all the biggies. We walk through the secrets to onboarding. We walk through the monthly end close, which is directly tied to your deliverables. We talk about pricing, and there's a few other things. I'm going to change the class a little bit, I think, and move more towards a tech AI component. And then we'll probably add some marketing in there. So, but I always really focus on those ones that I know are big pain points.
And
Pricing.
so you're scaring me here because you're telling me, and I'm going to use your words back at you. You're telling me that I need to slow down to speed up. I don't have 5 days to take off to do this. How are you going to convince me?
I'm like, I wish we were all going to Tahiti together for 5 days, but
Oh gosh, that sounds amazing. But I this doesn't feel like something I can manage, and I know you're going to convince me that I can, because you always convince me of all the hard things. Um, Tell
Yeah,
me how
so
to reframe this fear, and how slowing down and taking the time to do this is going to be worth it.
first of all, it's all the classes are an hour a day. We run them
Okay.
from 1 to 2, and, the classes are only an hour a day. Remember what I said earlier? You're not gonna fix all the things. You're gonna look at the lessons and say, "This is what I'm gonna focus on right now," so that you can resolve that problem. You'll get takeaways, you'll get it's that osmosis thing. You'll learn things and you'll come back to them maybe you're gonna focus on onboarding now, and then you're gonna deal with pricing in 6 months.
I think that's so
Um
smart because it makes you because I've talked about this a lot. I have ADHD and I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to do this focus in this one area and then I go over here." But if you're doing it in a group setting, for the 5 days, then it's keeping you accountable, going through this process
Mhm.
because I am notorious for starting something like that and then moving to something else.
Yeah, and, so we also have the free Facebook group where people come and ask questions about the trainings. We record them and put them up on Vimeo because we know there are people who are thinking about starting a firm, working at a larger corporation, like or they're working moms, or they can't get to the training at that specific time. So the recordings are available. And I've done versions of the Modern Firm Challenge over the years, and we've just really seen some wicked results that I'm super proud of.
Ooh, I want to. What are some of the results? Like, what have people accomplished through this?
I am sometimes candid to a fault, you know, which is like, I'm not here to tell you you can build $1 million firm overnight. What I'm here to tell you is you can do whatever you want to do, but it's going to take time, and all of the pain that I went through during Good Sense, and trust me, there was some like knockdown, drag out, crying on the floor, hysterical temper tantrum nights where I was just like, this is awful. I really believe led me to this point in my life to be a teacher and a mentor. And one of the things that the people who have participated in this is that I teach in a really practical way. You're going to leave there with a framework for your onboarding process. Or you're going to leave there with more ideas about your onboarding process than you have now, and it's going to improve. Sometimes you already have the framework, you just need to polish it. So it is something that I feel that I can say with confidence, not arrogance, that I'm a good teacher and I'm invested in people's success.
I believe this. We're good
Yeah,
friends,
we
and
know
I've known
this.
this about
Yes.
you for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Justine, where can we find out more about you and your work, and specifically how to sign up for this free Modern Firm Challenge? Because I know Question and I are very, we are very excited about it. I'm guessing some of our listeners are too.
So you can go to justinelackey.com/register. It's JUSTINE Lackey LACKEY.com/register. Please come and find me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people there. Of course, my website, which is just justinelackey.com. And we have a free Facebook group. Anybody is welcome to join that. I think we have about 4,000 members in there now. That's
Oh,
called
wow.
I know. There's a lot of building the community. That's what we love. So that's the incubator. So you can just go to Facebook and find that, search for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We would also like to ask listeners to follow the She Counts podcast LinkedIn page and to join in on the conversation by sharing underneath the episode, build the business you actually want. Tell us what's one system you wish you'd built before growing your firm, or that you wish the company that you work for had built before they grew.
And before we sign off, I want to leave you with a quote by author Lori Perez. I reserve the right to evolve. What I think and feel today is subject to revision tomorrow, which Justine ties in, I think, very well with how you've given us all permission to not only have clarity and then reverse engineer ourselves uh, to figure out how to build the firm that we are now clear on what we want to build, but also to decide, as you did, that our goals have changed and we have permission to do something differently.
Yeah, such an important quote and point, and something always to remember. So, thanks for being here with us on She Counts, the Real Talk podcast for women in accounting.
If something in today's episode hit home for you, and I hope it did because it certainly did for me, that's exactly why we're doing this.
So that you feel seen, heard, and never alone.
Remember that you can get CPE credit for listening at earmark.app. Links to that and any other resource will be in the show notes.
And please subscribe and leave us a review, because it helps other people and other women find the podcast, and share this with another woman in accounting who you feel needs to hear it.
And thank you for those of you who have left reviews. We read them out loud to each other. We copy and paste them in
We save
text
them
to each other.
Yeah.
We save them. It just makes us feel incredible to hear how some of these stories are resonating for you out there. So many thanks again to our amazing guest, Justine Lackey. We are so glad you could join us today. Thank you, my friend. And we'll see everyone in 2 weeks.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.